The test part 2. He's wearing a white cloth mask over his mouth and white gloves. He looks at Nanae expectantly and she unwinds her cloth. Her nose does not look good in the daylight, and without wanting to, I feel embarrassed. For a moment I see how he must. Her cheeks rough with sores and lumps, the folded twists of no nostrils. Then I shake my head free of those thoughts and see instead her brown eyes, as clear and sharp as a fox's, the smooth brown skin of her long neck, her pulse working quick and visible beneath her ear. From the pockets of his white coat, the stranger draws out a pad and pencil. He beckons for her to step forward, and she moves clear of the line, replacing her cloth. All I can see of the doctor's face are his eyes. They are unlined, and his gloved hands are nimble as they fill out the top form of the pad. He seems young to be a doctor. He hands the pad and pencil to Nanae, and she fills in the boxes marked name and age. There is a number at the top of the sheet, 0013822. He rips off the bottom of the form and marks it with a blue ink stamp. He gives this to her, the number circled. I look down at it with her and brush the paper with my fingertip. It is rough where other people have signed their names on the paper above it. The doctor gestures for me to hold out my hands, and I do. He unfurls my fingers with his pencil. He looks at my face and bare legs and then points for me to join the dwindling queue. He moves on to Diwa and her baby without a word. His silence is catching. It feels as if my tongue is stuck to the roof of my mouth. I trip forward to make up the gap between me and the man in front. And Nanae limps with me. "Not you!" barks a voice. Mr. Zamora is watching us closely. "You!" He points at Nanae. "You have your papers." Nanae holds up the piece of paper with the circled number. "Exactly. So you must go home and await the results of your assessment." "I think the results are fairly clear," says Nanae in a scratchy voice. Maybe her tongue is stuck too. Mr. Zamora's lips twitch, but it is Dr. Thomas who speaks next. "Even so, Tala, you can see we don't have the room. It would be a help if you could go and wait for Amihan at home." "I'm still here," said Bondoc from behind me. Capuno is beside him, holding his paper in the snarl of his fist. "I'll walk her home. You go home with Capuno." Nanae looks from Mr. Zamora to Sister Marguerite to Bondoc with a dazed expression. Then she kneels, although I know it's painful for her, and she hugs me, pinning my arms to my sides. "I love you, Amihan." "I love you too, Nanae," I say, and I mean it, especially because of how rude I was in my head when she took off her cloth. Capuno helps her up and she turns quickly to walk away with him, but not quickly enough for me to miss the tears in her eyes. Bondoc takes my hand in his cavernous palm and we catch up to the queue, which has now moved inside the hospital. It's hot and it smells like it always does, like stale breath and stale water. The examinations are happening in the main room. All the beds are empty and pushed up against the walls. There's no sign of Rosita, Nanae's friend who was admitted last week, or any of the other patients. There are more men with white face masks and white gloves stationed beside the rails of curtains that normally divide the room. People emerge from behind the curtains and are handed papers by Sister Clara. Sister Marguerite squeezes my shoulder as she goes to join them. Shortly, a doctor with a deep worry line down the centre of his forehead calls me forward. Bondoc drops my hand and the room tilts slightly without him mooring me to the floor. I step behind the curtain. "Name," says the doctor. "Amihan." "Surname?" I know what this means, but I don't know what the answer is, so I give him Nanae's name instead. "Age?" 12 years. He writes down my name and age on the form, then looks at me, his eyes crinkling, so I know he's smiling despite his face mark. "So, Amihan Tala, I am Dr. Rodell and I am from Manila. Do you know where that is?" "Do you know where Manila is?" Maybe you could do that. Maybe go and look it up. Manila. I nod. Manila is the biggest town in the places outside. The place where Mr. Zamora says I'll get a job someday if I'm untouched. It's a very long way from here. Nothing I'm going to do will hurt you, so you mustn't be afraid. I have a granddaughter who is 9, and she doesn't like doctors, even though I, her own Lolo, am one. Is your Lolo here at Cullion? No. I like him, but I don't want to show it too much, because he is one of Mr. Zamora's doctors. Whom do you live with? Was that man with you your Amma? I shake my head and laugh, because Nanae would scrunch up her face and make a yuck sound if I told her Dr. Rodell thought Bondoc was my father. I live with my Nanae, I say. And where is she? She was sent home with papers. Ah, said Dr. Rodell, and his voice is suddenly serious. She is a leper, then? We don't use that word. I say the sentence out loud before I can draw it back, but Dr. Rodell doesn't seem offended. Well, I'm very sorry I've used it then, he says, eyes creasing again. I'm afraid I'm going to have to keep my mask on, just to be safe. I'll call one of the sisters over, because I'm going to need to check your stomach as well as your legs. He gestures to where they are, and luckily Sister Marguerite is looking, so she is the one that comes over. I'm going to need to do a full examination, sister. Draw the curtains, would you? Says Dr. Rodell. Sister Marguerite pulls the rail into a triangle around the three of us. The light goes paler through the curtain. Sister Marguerite helps me take off my dress and then wraps a cloth around me so Dr. Rodell can see my skin and check for marks and numbness. He works quickly and Sister Marguerite moves the cloth so he can do my stomach. It tickles, but I don't move. When he's finished, he helps me back into my dress and he puts some cotton on a stick inside my nose and rubs it on my nostril. To check for things too small for my old eyes to see, he says, as he puts the cotton in a twist of paper. But it seems your Nanae has taken very good care of you. Yes, I say. I want to ask if this means I can stay with her, but Sister Marguerite has already opened the rails and is leading me towards Bondoc, so I only manage a quick thank you. Dr. Rodell's eyes smile again, and then he gestures for Dewa to come forward. Sister Clara hands me a piece of paper. As Bondoc leads me out, Dr. Rodell's crinkling eyes are already drifting towards Dewa's touched toes. Her baby is crying.